Cathy, oh Chatty Cathy, oh Mattel's famous talking doll.
If you were a kid in the 1960s and 1970s, your living room was probably overrun by a small army of baby dolls. How I ended up making a video about them, I'm still not sure. But here I am. This is where life has taken me. The original baby boom. Let's start with the classics.
When I grow up, I want to be a mommy.
You can play mommy right now with Ideal's Betsy Wetsy.
Betsy Wetsy, Tiny Tears, and Baby Beautiful. These dolls weren't about sparkle or sass. They were about realism. Betsy Wetsy could drink from a bottle and wet her diaper. Tiny Tears could cry actual tears. Baby Beautiful came in her own bassinet, and just the name alone made you feel like you were entering the hospital nursery. And they didn't just lie there either. You had Bye Bye Baby in her high chair, Toodles riding in a shopping cart, and a whole lineup that made playtime feel like a day in the life of a 20-something mom with quadruplets. If you think the baby doll boom was just a phase, the toy companies knew better. Every year brought a new version with one more feature that made your doll just a little more lifelike. Or weird, depending on how you see it. Dolls that did things. Now let's talk about the ones that did stuff. Dancerina? She wasn't just a ballerina in pink. Touch her crown, and she spun like she was auditioning for the Nutcracker in your living room. Hit the crown again, and she changed direction like she knew choreography. Toe point forward, backward, the whole deal. And she came with her own recording of the Nutcracker suite, so you were getting a show with music. Then there was Baby's Hungry. This doll actually seemed to chew when you fed her with a spoon. Her mouth moved, her cheeks puffed out, and when you gave her a bottle, she nursed like a real baby. Her eyes moved, too. Teen to adult, and back again.
Meet new growing up Skipper. She's two dolls in one. Because when you turn her arm, you can make her change instantly from a little girl to a tall, slender teenage doll.
By the late 60s, doll innovation had taken a wild turn. Gone were the days when your doll stayed the same age forever. Now toy companies were toying with time itself. Take growing up Skipper, Barbie's little sister, who hit shelves in the 70s but carried the spirit of this late 60s trend. Twist her arm and, like magic, Skipper grew taller and suddenly looked a whole lot older. It was like a before and after right there in your hands. One second she was a kid, the next she was ready for high school. It might sound a little strange now, but back then, kids were fascinated. You could play through whole life stages without swapping dolls. And it wasn't just about size or age. The wardrobe changes followed suit, literally. Whether she was heading to school, out shopping, or dressed for a night at the soda fountain, your doll's look could shift as fast as your imagination. These were the shapeshifters of the toy shelf, designed for storylines that grew up right alongside you. Quick pause. If you've found yourself down this nostalgic rabbit hole with me more than once, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you'd think, and it keeps this whole thing going. If this is your first time here, no pressure. I'm just glad you stopped by. And hey, if you're on Facebook, come hang out over there too. It's a great place to share your own memories, connect with other folks who remember these classics, and keep the good vibes rolling. See you there. Saying, seeing, and spooking.
Can you keep a secret? Then listen to Mattel's new baby secret.
Things got a little strange with baby saying see. When she talked, her lips and eyes moved. Not subtly either. This doll stared you down and said, "I can see in the dark, can you?" Now, depending on your age and your tolerance for weird, that was either awesome or nightmare fuel. Right next to her, you had drowsy baby Secret, whispering sweet nothings when you pulled her string. Back then, kids weren't fazed, but look at them now with adult eyes, and you start to wonder if some of those dolls didn't wander out of the Twilight Zone. Walking, skating, and other mobility feats. Mobility was the next big thing. Baby First Step could walk and skate, not with a remote or anything. She did it all herself, and then talking. Baby First Step added speech to the mix. You weren't just playing anymore. You were managing a whole little person. And remember Cheerful Tearful? She had moods. You could move her arm up and her little frown would turn into a smile. Move it down again and boom, Pout City. She even cried real tears. Mattel managed to bottle childhood mood swings in a single toy. For a lot of kids, that doll was the first introduction to emotional labor. Cheer her up, make her smile, repeat. The emotional work of dollhood. That's one of the overlooked things about this whole wave of dolls. They weren't just objects to dress and feed. They were designed to need you. Crying, hungry, moody, sleepy. They created this mini world where kids weren't just playing house. They were managing households. A training ground for responsibility, maybe. Or just a new way to experience control and care. Some of these dolls were astonishingly detailed. Cuddly Baby Coo, Miss Sweet Dreams, Baby Lullaby, Posable Patty, and Susie Snowtime. Every one of them had some gimmick or charm. The names alone sounded like characters from a soft-focused bedtime book. Swingy and the Rise of Music-Driven Dolls. Then you had Swingy. Released in 1969, she danced, swung her arms, flipped her hair, and even walked, all to her own pop record. Swingy wasn't just a doll, she was a whole vibe. By then, dolls weren't just for playing house. They had personality, rhythm, and flair. Sleepers, criers, and other late 60s characters. Some dolls didn't need flashing lights or a dance routine to stand out. They just had one charming trick. Take the Mama baby doll, for example. Tilt her, and she'd let out a soft mama, like a tiny record player built into her chest. Then there was the thirsty Walker doll. Give her a drink, and she'd cry real water tears as she tottered across the room. These dolls didn't need big personalities. One small feature was all it took to spark a kid's imagination and maybe even a lifelong memory. The Chatterbox with a wardrobe. Now let's talk about Charmin Chatty.
If there's a very special little girl on your Christmas list, then here's something you just have to see. This is Charmin Chatty.
Probably the chattiest doll of the bunch. She came with 5 double-sided records, giving her 120 different phrases depending on which one you popped into her back. At 24 inches tall, with shoulder-length blonde or auburn hair, blue side-glancing eyes, a sailor outfit, and red-rimmed glasses, she earned the nickname the Educated Doll. And her wardrobe? Impressive. Each outfit came with its own themed record: nurse, shopper, traveler. You dressed her up, and she had something to say about it.
Oh, Chatty Cathy, oh, Mattel's famous talking doll. We pull the rings, and you say 11 different things. Let's play house.
But Charmin Chatty wasn't the only one getting wordy in the 60s. Mattel had already broken ground with Chatty Cathy back in 1960. She had a pull-string voice box that said things like, "Let's play house," "Please take me with you," and the classic, "I love you." Simple stuff, but at the time it blew kids' minds. She didn't have records, though, just a built-in rotation of phrases that made her feel surprisingly lifelike. The Wild-Haired Wonder. Troll dolls, also known as damn dolls, were the oddballs of the 1960s toy scene, and somehow they were everywhere. With their wild neon hair, oversized glassy eyes, and perpetual expressions of surprise, they were equal parts weird and lovable. Originally created in Denmark by Thomas Dam, these little guys crossed the Atlantic and exploded in popularity across the US. Kids clipped them to backpacks, lined them up on shelves, and believed they brought good luck. They didn't talk, walk, or cry, but they didn't have to. Their charm was all in the hair and that kooky grin that made you smile whether you wanted to or not. The baby dolls of the 1960s were more than playthings. They were little mechanical marvels. Some danced, some grew, some watched you while you slept. But they all had one thing in common. They mirrored the era, a time of change, of invention, of pushing boundaries in even the smallest things. So maybe you didn't own Baby's Hungry or Cheerful Tearful. Maybe you didn't pirouette with Dancerina or swing with Swingy, but you probably knew someone who did, and odds are you remember. because once you saw those dolls in action, you never really forgot them. They weren't just dolls, they were little wonders. And they made the 1960s a whole lot more animated.